2v2 restarts. How can we use restarts to improve transfer from practice to games? Good morning, coaches. Today I'm going to be talking about how we want to think about how our activities and our session design can impact what happens not only in the immediate session, but later on towards the game and further practices for overall arching player development. One of the habits we have in supporting Arkansas is run triggering the pass. We want to see that dynamic movement where our teammates engage defenders and how we can manipulate the opposition to find space, exploit space in order to break lines and ultimately score goals. When we think about those kinds of habits, oftentimes we want to think about what that ideal or perfect iteration of it looks like, but rarely in the game does that actually happen. So how can we incorporate the kind of variability in practice that we will likely encounter in games? How can we recreate that in practice so the players can see how habits can be used in a variety of situations? What we have here is a really basic 2v2 setup. We have our yellow team defending south goal, attacking north, blue defending north and attacking south. Yellow starts the ball and the ball is immediately played across. Every player enters the field and the 2v2 is on. And if we were to start this and we have our 8 or however many players, maybe we have a few fields, but we have our 2v2 going on and we observe and we kind of reiterate, hey, how can our player who is off the ball, how can they engage the defender? How can that run trigger the movement? What other kinds of runs can we make to manipulate and exploit or create space? And so we see how that goes a few times. After a few minutes, we're going to give them a different kind of restart so they can use that same principle from a different setup standing point or starting point. So rather than having them start on either side of the goal, we're going to have them start on either touchline. In this situation, we have the same basic thing, ball gets played across, but because our players and our opponents are in a slightly different setup, it encourages this player on the ball and this player off the ball in the attacking phase to really think about, if I was previously maybe using an overlapping run, or if I was running at the defender and then getting wide, how is that going to be different here? We're using the same principles, but because it's a different setup and a different starting point, it's going to have to force players to be creative in how they manipulate the defender, how they engage the defender, and ultimately how they can then find, exploit, and space and then break that line to score. So when this happens, if these two defenders are really wide, maybe we, if we're going to engage the defender and keep them wide, maybe this player can dribble straight across into that space, score a goal. What else can we see? What else can we do to manipulate the defenders? Another iteration that I really like with these 2v2s restarts is having our players line up across from one another. And so in this situation, when the ball gets played, these two players are going to be so close together. How they work together, how they find space, how they manipulate space is going to be really challenging. In addition, these two players, one of them, is this player going to be the first defender? Are they going to step to the ball, or are they going to kind of hold off and be that support defender, whereas this player is then going to react? Giving them these different ways of looking at it is really going to challenge them to think, how can I apply whatever principle we're using in a slightly different way from a different starting point, from which I can then help to solidify what that might look like in every iteration we might find. And the more variance we can provide in utilizing these principles, hey, we want to trigger, our run is going to trigger the pass. We want to find space. What does that look like in all of these different iterations? So using restarts in this fashion can give players different looks at similar problems so that they can better attune to the information in the environment, to give them ways to adapt and improvise using principles so that when they step into the game, they're prepared not only for problems 1 through 10, but for that 11th unknown problem as well. 2v2 restarts, how can we use restarts to improve transfer? Cheers.